Hello, and welcome back to Thematic Intelligence. I'm George Trotter, and today I'll be speaking to Isabel Al-Dhahir, who is a principal analyst at Global Data, about her recent report on synthetic biology. Hi Isabel, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you, George. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Yes, as am I. Very excited. Good. So in this episode, we will be discussing synthetic biology, which sectors have started using it, and then which sectors are soon expected to adopt it, the regulatory issues surrounding it, and finally, which countries have become leaders in this technology. So thank you very much for listening, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. Synthetic biology is a fairly new term, with many listeners not fully aware of what it means. So Isabel, very simply, what is synthetic biology?
So, synthetic biology is the intentional modification of genetic material to either enhance or suppress certain characteristics. So, this can be done, for example, by editing segments of DNA, by copying, moving, or even cutting segments entirely. And it's in this way that synthetic biology enables the creation of new biological systems and materials that do not exist in the natural world.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, what are the main sort of sectors where the technology is the most common?
So, although it's relatively unknown, the implementation of synthetic biology is already making an impact in certain sectors. For example, you may have heard of Impossible Foods, the company that makes
Yeah, yeah.
plant-based burgers. Their products are being sold by the likes of Burger King, Walmart, Trader Joe's, to name a few, and their products are sold in numerous countries around the world. What many consumers may not be aware of is that Impossible Foods uses synthetic biology to give their plant-based burgers a meat-like flavor. There's a natural molecule called heme that's responsible for giving meat its distinctive taste. Impossible Foods has developed a way to embed the genetic sequence for heme production into yeast, and then by fermenting the yeast, heme can be produced at scale and added to enhance the flavor of vegetarian or vegan products. There are also some interesting uses of synthetic biology within healthcare. For example, in the development of new therapies that use engineered living T cells to beat cancer. There are big names operating in the space like Novartis, Johnson and Johnson, Gilead. Another example includes vaccines. So vaccines are expected to increasingly use synthetic biology. In fact, the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine developed by Moderna was designed using synthetic biology techniques.
Really? Wow, of course, it's going to be pretty pivotal in sort of the current climate already. Other than the pharma and the food service sectors that you mentioned, where else could we see this technology being used?
Uh, I'd say synthetic biology sits at various different stages of commercialization depending on the sector. Agriculture is an interesting one where it's gaining some early traction. Synthetic biology offers numerous solutions to food insecurity by improving the durability, the pest resistance, and even the nutritional content of plants and crops. So through genetic modifications to the crops themselves, or through specially engineered microbes that are added to the soil, many problems related to food shortages can be resolved. And countries that are heavily dependent on imported food may turn to synthetic biology as a means of developing a domestic agriculture sector. There are several other sectors where we're seeing synthetic biology begin to take hold. For example, in consumer, particularly in fashion, there are leather-like textiles being made via genetically engineered mycelium. There are silk textiles being made through engineered proteins. And the advantage in these use cases is that, of course, there's no need for animal skins nor plastic-based materials. And then another sector that's particularly interesting to keep an eye on is technology. So several research institutions, along with big tech companies like Microsoft and Illumina, among several others, are exploring the use of DNA as a new form of digital data storage. And given that data storage needs are growing exponentially, DNA is particularly well suited because it's so dense. So you can store a much larger amount of data in a much smaller spatial volume compared to traditional silicon-based memory.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the benefits with the sort of vegan consumer behaviors at the moment. So yeah, it'll be huge, huge technology in the future, I'm sure. But with this technology, there's going to be some regulatory issues with the constantly evolving frontiers that are possible with it. So what regulatory framework do you see being put in place to accommodate this technology?
Yes, so regulation is on the tip of everyone's tongue when talking about synthetic biology. However, the consensus appears to be that regulation has not been implemented or at least updated to deal with the current state of synthetic biology's capabilities, which have grown enormously over the past 20, 30 years. We're still largely relying on regulations that came into force when GM crops were being developed now well over 20 years ago. So it's hard to talk about regulation universally because each country or region will surely develop their own policies. For example, historically, the EU has imposed relatively stringent regulations on genetically modified products, while the US has taken a much more relaxed approach. But generally speaking, it's going to be very important to find a compromise between imposing regulations that are strict enough to ensure safety and protect natural ecosystems, while not being so strict that innovation is stifled.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. It'd be a nightmare if it's that harshly regulated. So, for the final question, I know it's still quite early in its development, but are there any countries which have been the first to attempt to become leaders to sort of stick their neck out and really invest in this technology?
So it is very early stage, but countries are starting to consider more seriously how synthetic biology can be incorporated into national strategies. In fact, in 2021, Australia published a national synthetic biology roadmap where it highlighted the key sectors where it thinks synthetic biology could make the strongest impact to its economy and the creation of new jobs. In China, synthetic biology features strongly in its latest 5-year plan, as well as in China's preceding 5-year plan too. So China's had its eye on it for a while. I believe healthcare, food, and agriculture were highlighted as the most relevant sectors. And then under the Biden administration, the US has made it clear that it wants to strengthen its own bioeconomy, and synthetic biology is likely to play a strong role there. So going forward, I'm sure we'll see more communication on this topic as more countries look to strengthen their R&D in this area.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Isabel, for those instant insights. And thank you for listening. That's all for today. And so from us in Thematic Intelligence, see you next time.
Thanks, George.